Most people think of housing and jobs as two completely different parts of the economy. Housing is about real estate. Jobs are about employment, making money. But in reality, these two forces are deeply connected. In fact, housing markets and labor markets often move together in ways that can shape the entire economy. When jobs grow, housing demand, it rises. When housing weakens, job losses can follow. And throughout modern economic history, some of the biggest recessions have started with problems in the housing market. So what exactly connects housing and employment? And why do economists watch this relationship so closely? Well, let's break it down. Let's start with a simple question. Why does housing matter so much for the economy? After all, housing is just one sector among many. There are technology companies, manufacturing industries, financial services, transportation networks. So why does housing often play such a central role during economic booms and recessions? The answer comes down to how many different parts of the economy housing touches. Building a house is not just about real estate. It activates an entire chain of economic activity. Construction workers build the structure. Lumber companies supply wood. Steel manufacturers produce framing materials. Factories produce appliances. Furniture companies sell home goods. Landscapers prepare the property. Banks issue mortgages. Real estate agents facilitate sales. When a new home is built or purchased, dozens of different industries benefit. This is why economists often describe housing as a multiplier sector. A change in housing activity tends to ripple across the economy. When housing demand increases, job growth often follows. And when housing slows down, job losses can spread across multiple industries. Now let's look at the other side of the relationship. Jobs also influence housing demand. In order to buy a home, people need stable income. Mortgage lenders look at employment history, salary levels, and job stability when deciding whether to approve loans. So when employment is strong and wages are rising, more people can afford homes. That increases demand for housing. But when job growth slows or unemployment rises, fewer people qualify for mortgages. Some buyers delay purchasing homes. Others remain renters longer, and housing demand begins to soften. In other words, housing and jobs reinforce each other. Strong employment supports housing demand. Strong housing markets support employment. This feedback loop is one of the reasons housing plays such a powerful role in economic cycles. To see how this relationship works in practice, we can look at past recessions. One of the most famous examples occurred during the 2008 financial crisis. During the early 2000s, housing prices across the United States rose rapidly. Low interest rates and easy credit fueled a surge in mortgage lending. Construction activity expanded. Developers built millions of new homes, and housing-related industries hired large numbers of workers. But when housing prices began falling in 2007, the entire system started to shift. Homeowners with declining property values began reducing spending. Construction companies slowed new projects. Mortgage lenders faced rising defaults, and job losses began spreading through the economy. By the time the crisis reached its peak in 2008 and 2009, millions of jobs had disappeared. While the financial system played a major role in the crisis, housing was at the center of the chain reaction. But housing does not only influence recessions, it also plays a powerful role during economic expansions. When housing markets heat up, employment often rises quickly in construction and related industries. This can create strong local economic growth. New neighborhoods appear. Retail businesses open nearby. Infrastructure expands. Local governments collect more property taxes. Entire regions can experience economic booms driven by housing development. But this growth can also create risk if housing activity becomes excessive. Rapid price increases can encourage speculative buying. Developers may build more homes than the market ultimately needs. Hey, real quick, sorry about interrupting the video, but I just had a thought. No one has ever taught in school, college, or anywhere how to get a mortgage, how to get the best mortgage, and teach about every single type of mortgage out there in America. Ways to save thousands of dollars, ways to get qualified. And what I did is I made 2 courses, one for buying your own home and refinancing it, and the other one for actually investing properties. Teaches you all about that, how to save money, get the best rates. It's insane. Links down below to a package, a bundle of both courses. Take a look at it. Now let's get back to the video.
And lenders may extend credit to borrowers who have difficulty sustaining mortgage payments. If those imbalances grow too large, the housing market can eventually reverse. When that happens, the job losses tied to housing can be significant, but housing influences employment in another, less obvious way. It affects geographic mobility. In a healthy economy, workers often move to regions where jobs are growing. For example, if a city experiences strong job creation, people may relocate there to take advantage of new opportunities. But if housing in those regions becomes too expensive, workers may find it difficult to move. High housing costs can effectively limit labor mobility. This can create a situation where jobs exist in certain areas, but workers cannot afford to live nearby. Economists sometimes refer to this as a housing supply constraint. When housing supply fails to keep up with job growth, prices rise rapidly, and that can distort the labor market. Workers remain in regions with fewer opportunities simply because moving becomes too expensive. At the same time, companies in high-growth regions struggle to hire employees because housing costs are too high. In this way, housing can influence not just how many jobs exist, but where those jobs are located. Another connection between housing and employment involves household wealth. For many families, their home represents their largest financial asset. When home prices rise, homeowners often feel wealthier. This can influence spending behavior. Economists sometimes call this the wealth effect. When homeowners believe their property has increased in value, they may feel more comfortable spending money. Home renovations, furniture purchases, travel, consumer goods. But when housing prices fall, that wealth effect can reverse. Households may begin cutting spending in order to rebuild financial security. Reduced consumer spending can then affect businesses across the economy, which can ultimately influence employment levels. So the relationship between housing and jobs operates through multiple channels: construction activity, consumer spending, mortgage lending, labor mobility, household wealth. All of these forces interact with one another, and together they help shape economic cycles. This is why economists watch housing data so closely. Housing starts, home sales, mortgage rates, construction employment, home prices. These indicators often provide early clues about where the economy might be heading, because when housing begins accelerating or slowing, the effects rarely remain isolated to the real estate market. They spread across the broader economy. And that is the hidden connection between housing and jobs. Housing helps determine how many workers are employed in construction and related industries. Employment levels determine how many households can afford to buy homes. And both forces together influence consumer spending, economic growth, and financial stability. Understanding that relationship helps explain why housing data often appears so frequently in economic headlines, because housing is not just about real estate. It is one of the central engines of the entire economy. If you found this breakdown helpful and want more videos explaining how different parts of the economy connect behind the scenes, consider subscribing. Understanding those signals can help you see economic shifts long before they reach the headlines. I will see you in the next one.